Tony, welcome to the floor plan.
Hey, Libby, it is such an honor, such a pleasure. Any chance to just chat with you is a win. I'm glad we get to share this one.
Likewise, I first met you when I was helping a couple of people here in Australia set up the co-working movement. We've had those spaces. We could go back and talk about the Enlightenment and coffee houses, and people think this is quite a new phenomenon. However, the kind of modern version that started in San Fran really sort of kicked off around 2012. So I think it was around 2012, 2013. We were looking at setting stuff up here with the first co-working conference Australia. But you and another absolute legend in the co-working space, Alex Hillman from Indie Hall in Philly, had already kind of run out the gate with this, and you had set up, I think, one of New York's first and certainly best co-working spaces, New York City.
The first one in Manhattan.
Yeah, so New York City was, I think, and what Alex did with Indie Hall as well, was so, I think, ahead of its time, definitely, because what we saw later was that co-working became a real estate play. And we could obviously talk about some of the big providers who ended up on movie screens. But the original concept and the values and the philosophy of co-working, which I think is so relevant to today and what we're going to talk about, was around community, building a community, a sense of shared purpose first, and the space was secondary. So New York City had a legendary community. So tell us a little bit about your journey with that and why that is still so relevant to the challenges we're facing today in the workplace post-pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I only ended up on this journey because I was working for a web development firm. We ended up getting rid of our office because we were able to work from home because we were tech geeks in 2005. And so I had kind of a early seat into the experience of, losing my mind being stuck working from home all day, not realizing that 15 years later, everybody was going to be experiencing that together. And so in the course of that time, more and more other people, had this experience. But for me, it was always about having a place to go where I could be around other interesting people, where I could find belonging and community, but specifically in the context of people who are creative, people who are entrepreneurial, my neighbors. And I wasn't going to find that in a traditional workplace because I didn't have one. And I, ended up leading the charge to build New York City to solve that for myself. But along the way, what I realized was that there was a bigger problem that we were speaking to, which was that people in general need more ways to connect in real life, better community support, better venues, better gathering spaces. And, in recent years, we've seen more discussion about the idea of a loneliness epidemic, crises of social isolation, civic disengagement, things like that. And so we have a much bigger conversation to have around what it means to get people out of the house, away from the screens, and why that's really important for our physical and mental health and for our civic health as well.
And before we get on to that, because you're doing some really, really interesting work now, I'd love to sort of explore what your perception is of where co-working spaces are fitting in now post-pandemic, because some organizations are paying for memberships for their staff for a few reasons, whether it be innovation, whether it be connection. And as you said, that serendipity of overhearing conversations from people outside your network, those weak ties outside your industry, is so important. And in some cases, you might commute to a co-working space so that you're not at home, or you can't work at home by yourself, but you don't have to go all the way to the office. But I feel like a little bit of the original community in many cases has been lost. And, the roster of amazing events, I used to love looking up for New York City, for Indie Hall, there were a few others. Just, it's not about a desk, right? That's not the main reason you have a co-working space, which I think has been lost.
Well, I'll say this. I think that the narrative has certainly taken a bit of a beating over the course of the last, 15 years or so. And, WeWork was definitely a major factor in that because they soaked up so much attention and they had a very specific kind of, flavor of all of this. I think they did, at least want to try to build community, but it got into this whole, real estate and office rental world. And so to some degree, that conversation has changed. But what I will say is that co-working, in terms of being a decentralized movement of local spaces, has continued to grow and evolve. And there are still wonderful spaces all over the world. A lot of the original ones have gone away, but new ones have come up, even in more recent years. So there's a new one in New York City that is that I'm thrilled about, called Fabric, Fabrik, and their emphasis is entirely on community builders, community leaders, having a membership specifically for people who want to host events in the space. And they have several events every day of the week. And so the need for people to get together and share space because they want to build community together and have those kinds of interactions is still very much real. While at the same time, yeah, companies, the smart ones are recognizing that it is a huge competitive advantage. It's a huge recruitment and retention advantage to give employees the best possible environment for them to thrive, both professionally and in terms of their own human needs. And so, there was a survey that came out from Cigna in, I believe, 2023, Cigna, the major health insurance provider, saying that they studied loneliness in the workplace, and employees who were socially isolated, of which it was over half, underperformed. They were more likely to leave. They were more likely to call in sick. And they were ultimately a drain on businesses to the tune of billions of dollars. Whereas employees with healthy social connection were performing much better. And so there's a really strong case to be made for companies to say, hey, look, it's in your interest that your employees be healthy, and not just physically healthy, not just mentally healthy, but socially healthy. And if you help them be socially healthy, then they're going to be physically and mentally healthy, and they're just going to be better workers, they're going to stick around longer. And that is not something that you try to address in the workplace either, right? We're over the whole company Zoom meeting, happy hour, or whatever. It's fine to have connection between employees, but social health is about your employees having a healthy social life outside of work. And you can support and nurture and cheerlead that. And when you do, you end up having a tremendous advantage.
I found this study absolutely kind of alarming, but also fascinating at the same time, because as you said, I think our reach in organizations extends, as you said, to physical, perhaps psychological, hopefully, certainly nowadays, emotional well-being. But that idea of social well-being outside of the workplace, I think, is still quite foreign to a lot of organizations, because as you said, it's after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, it was, oh, let's have Friday drinks on Zoom and everyone wear a silly hat, which people will still say now that was absolute torture. I've been on a screen for 8 hours and now you want me to wear a silly hat and have wine with my colleagues. Or, but now, since we've gone back to the office, it's let's have pizza on Friday night and all watch a movie together after we I haven't met anyone who wants
to, bonding activities, companies,
right.
things like that. But I also
Forced.
think we've moved past the company is your family messaging.
Yes.
We've rejected that. It's behind us. And now I think it's okay to say, hey, look, let's get along. Let's have good, healthy, professional relationships. And also let's recognize this is a job and we want to go home and be with our families and our neighbors. And a really good good healthy work environment is one that nurtures and celebrates that and recognizes that those employees are going to come back and do better work when they come back to the office the next day.
So I'd love to talk about some of the new initiatives that you're doing around this, because I think organizations will be hearing this and saying, absolutely, but I have no idea where to start. And one of the things you're doing right now, which I think is just so fantastic, is the New to Town initiative, because you've moved a little bit out of New York now, I think. So you yourself were new to where you've moved to. So tell us a little bit about what inspired this movement that you're now working on.
Yeah, so my wife and I lived in New York City for a number of years and decided to move outside of the city to Norwalk, Connecticut, which is about an hour outside of the city. It's a commutable suburb outside of New York. And we chose this place because it's vibrant, diverse, interesting. It has a lot of good stuff going on. Uh, and at the same time, we were brand new. We didn't know anyone around here. We didn't really know what the situation was like. And so, being the good community nerd that I am, I started doing a heck of a lot of research. I started Googling around, just trying to find what's going on around here. And I found that there's actually quite a bit going on in Norwalk. And so I compiled that into a directory of my own, just a Google Doc. But I did something I've been wanting to do for a long time, which is that I hosted an event called the New to Town Meetup. And it was for people to find out what's going on in town. And what was amazing was most of the people who showed up were not new, but they did want to know what was going on. There were people who lived here for years who still felt socially hungry. And so we had a great conversation about what the resources that are here. I invited some local community leaders, and that turned into more of a relationship with a couple of employees at the government of the city of Norwalk, with whom I am now collaborating on a number of different things, including a print version of that activity directory that I had created, which harkens back to something that used to be more common. So it used to be more common that cities would have club directories. So if you moved to a city, you would get a pamphlet in your mailbox that told you, hey, the Elks Club meets at Tuesdays at 2:30. The Kiwanis, the Lions, the Masons, the PTA, whatever, all of these social groups. It was expected that you would be an active participant in your neighborhood and in your community, and that's eroded. So I'm bringing some of that back. We printed a directory and said, here's all the cool stuff going on in Norwalk. And, for the people listening, I'm holding it up right now, but, we have like a very basic thing, and the city paid for this. They printed it, and now we're putting it out and distributing it to wherever we can put it so that people are aware there's all kinds of good stuff going on here. And now the most recent thing I'm doing is that I'm tabling at local fairs. So we have this Sono Saturday Market, South Norwalk Sono Saturday Market, the last Saturday of every month in the summer. And I have a table that's I'm calling it a pop-up mini civic and activity fair, where I just have a table of stuff telling you all the stuff that's going on in Norwalk, the clubs you can join, the spaces you can visit. And from a civic standpoint, hey, we've got an election coming up, the municipal election, which a lot of people don't pay attention to, but we're going to elect a new mayor. Make sure you're registered. Here's the information. Here are all our boards and commissions in the city. And by the way, some of them have vacancies. So here's a little packet. Maybe you didn't know some of this existed, but let's lower that barrier between you and civic engagement and participation in any which way we can. And what I'm finding is that a lot of it is just a matter of putting in a little effort, printing some stuff out and making it more visible. And so there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, right? The upside to the fact that we have this massive social disconnection crisis is that there are a lot of easy ways for us to achieve pretty substantial victories with relatively little work. And so what I'm turning that into is more of a platform for people who want to do this in their city, whether in an official capacity or not, but potentially ideally to work with mayors, to work with city officials, to say, hey, we can help improve social and civic connection in your city in a way that's measurable, in a way that's going to generate measurable positive outcomes in terms of potentially even physical and mental health and civic engagement and crime and all these other things that are so important with very minimal investment. And so I'm actually going to be meeting with the teams of the two top mayoral candidates to talk about a platform I put together, a policy platform, where I'm inviting them to say, hey, make this a part of your platform. Like, make this part of what you're going to promise in your campaign that you're going to take seriously and invest in, because I think it's going to be an easy win. I think it's
Hmm.
going to be a great way to show that you're supporting a lot of things that are important to people. And you're going to be able ultimately to demonstrate that you've made a difference without spending a lot of money. It's kind of a no
Hmm.
brainer.
Hmm.
So I'm working on just continuing to uh, set an example here in Norwalk, to experiment, to prove some concepts, and then ultimately to package those things up and inspire and to challenge people in other cities to do better.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that as my next question. I'm sure people are going to hear this and say, that's a great idea. How can I do that? Do I approach my local council? So, are there steps in the beginning that people who may never have worked with council or the local government, where do they start?
Gosh, it's a great question. I would say that it really depends on how far you've come already, where you're at. But I think it's important and it's valuable, even if you start by just getting a sense of what the landscape is in your community. Are you already a member of something? Are you already participating in your local community fabric? Do you have a spot that you go to on a regular basis? If you don't have a regular hangout spot,
Mm.
super valuable to start figuring out what that hangout spot might be, where you make friends with the barista or the manager of the bar or the restaurant, whatever it is, or the library, and you start to make yourself a known regular entity. The other thing is just being aware, being participating. If you see that there's events going on in town, show up to them if you can. Is there a city council meeting coming up? Can you go to that meeting? It's going to be super boring, but maybe you're going to meet your local council person afterward
Yeah.
and you're going to have a really interesting conversation about something, just kind of having an idea of what's going on and then looking for opportunities to be helpful. So this is something I just gave a talk on Tuesday. Even if you are organizing something, if you're already leading, but you're looking to spread the word, you're looking to make more partnerships and more collaboration between other people in town, find where there's other people who are doing things, who are already community leaders who need help. There's
Mhm.
a really great civic organization in Norwalk, which is Sustainable Streets Norwalk, and they advocate for, pedestrian, bike lanes, transit, things like that. But it's a little volunteer group that's very scrappy. They have no budget and they need a lot of help with a lot of stuff. And they're
Mm.
doing really great work and they know a lot about how the city works. They know a lot about how policy works. They're wonderful, amazing, engaged people, and they need tons of help. And
Mhm.
so there's so much opportunity to help somebody else who's probably been doing this for a while, who could use a little, a helping hand. And they're going to be very valuable to you in terms of helping you make connections and all of that. So there's a lot of ways to get involved and to be valuable and helpful, that don't involve asking a lot and that you don't have to be super social to do. And then if you got more you want to contribute there, you want to host a new to town meetup or, create a city directory, give me a call and I'll help you.
Yeah, I love that. I used to live just kind of up the mountain a little bit here, about half an hour away at a place called Mount Tambourine. And I think for people listening, you don't have to do, they might be thinking, oh my goodness, is this kind of some cringy thing where you get together in a room and everyone's standing around awkwardly with like stickers of their name. But what somebody did up at Mount Tambourine was think, I'm going to start a scarecrow festival. And so what they did was engage everybody on the mountain to say, hey, why don't, if you want, make a scarecrow and around, I'm guessing around Halloween, and put it out the front of your house. Okay. And so we're going to have this scarecrow festival where everyone walks around with their pets and their families and their friends and drives around, looks at all the scarecrows. And then in one street, there was a very big kind of center median that was, I can't remember how wide, but pretty wide, that was
Yeah.
grassed. And so they made a picnic then during the Scarecrow Festival, where
Yeah.
then everyone kind of got together. They maybe had some prizes for the scarecrows, and everyone just came and bought food and sat down in the median and had this picnic, which was completely awesome, but very sort of unique to this space where it was kind of a bit more of a rural area. But
Yeah.
we know that 50% of the workforce roughly are introverts, Tony, and might be thinking, that's great. I feel kind of a bit isolated too, but the idea of going to a room full of people that I don't know is terrifying.
I
And
got a
I
tip
heard,
for them.
yeah, what do you do?
So there is the program that I am most excited about in the last couple of years is Silent Book Club.
Oh,
And
this sounds amazing.
Silent Book Club is exactly what it sounds like. It's people get together in a restaurant, in a bar, in a library, in a park, and they quietly socialize just whoever they're sitting with, they chit chat for a little while. And then when the timer starts, everyone reads a book. They read their own book, whatever they bring with them, and everyone just reads together in silence. And then when the timer's up, you can socialize again and head out. And what I find incredible about this is it is, I think, potentially a new category of social events that I call ambient social or introvert friendly social, where you are doing something that is social, but you're not doing something that requires you to be a super duper social butterfly. And I cannot tell you how many people absolutely freak out with excitement when I tell them about it, if they haven't heard about it already, that people might not be so hot on going to the next networking happy hour thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if I tell them, hey, you can go hang out and read books around other people, that is a much, much easier ask, and something that we who are still nurturing our atrophied social muscles post-pandemic, that's a little bit more in line with what a lot of people are ready for. There are 1,500 plus chapters all around the world. It's totally free. There's probably a silent book club near wherever you are right now. And if there isn't one, it's easy enough to start one. So that's a good example, right? Where my wife is on the leadership committee for the local silent book club. It's a really good watering hole. We've met a lot of interesting people. We've learned about other events happening in town. So a lot of times just finding a way to get a foot in the door with an easy program is a really great way to achieve a win without asking a lot. I run bike parties on Friday nights. It's literally
So
show
cool.
up with a bike and go ride around town and play some music on your Bluetooth, and that's it. And it's, again, low barrier. There are a number of people who come to that who are not very sociable. Like sometimes, somebody comes to bike party and I'll be like, hey man, what's going on? I'm Tony. And they're like, hey,
don't talk to me.
They're almost like, like I came here to be social, but I didn't come here to talk.
So that's
and I'm like,
really,
I'm good with that. We don't need to
Mm-hmm.
talk. We could just ride bikes and you could go home. We don't need to say a word. And that's a win for me. Like I don't need to force you to be in extrovert mode after a long week. So small little easy wins that make it easier for people to poke their heads out of the shells is great.
I think
And
it's a
if you
really
want to Scarecrow Festival, that's amazing too. We could talk all day about why that's super incredible.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction, because people have this idea that being social means chatting a lot and going up to people and going, yeah, hi, I'm Tony. What do you do? And everyone's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. Even if you are extroverted or an introverted extrovert, as you said, people have really long weeks. We know that most people's calendars are full of meetings, more meetings than makes any sense. So they get to the end of the week and all the memes you see on social media, I just want to wrap myself in a blanket and, kind of don't speak to me. So you don't have to talk to be social. I think a lot of people will be like, wow, I've never thought of that.
Ambient social, and even just hanging out at a local cafe. If you know a spot nearby where the vibes are great, where it's, there's just good energy in the space, the people who run it are cool. Just hanging out there on a regular basis achieves a lot of good and maybe ends up connecting you to good social things. So many of the good things that came for me socially just came from literally just hanging out at the same cafe regularly, committing to a spot, associating with, hey, this is my favorite spot. When I meet someone for coffee, I meet there, that kind of thing. It leads to good outcomes. And I will also say, Libby, like we can make this even easier. People, a lot of people have lost the art of hanging out, and the simple act of just having a friend over, even if it's to like just eat pizza and watch trashy reality television,
Yes.
not my favorite activity, but if you're doing that, if you just get a friend to come over on a regular basis to eat and watch TV with, you're already ahead of the game.
Mm.
Even if you do a phone call with a friend who's not nearby and you do a walk and talk once a week for half an hour in the morning, huge win. So there's a
Mm.
lot of ways to nurture a sense of social connection and belonging that don't involve go join a new group of strangers,
Yeah.
which can
Yeah,
be very
exactly.
intimidating to a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So for organizations, Tony, what are some practical steps they're going to hear these stats and go, "Oh my gosh, I need to do something to help my employees with social well-being." What can they
Yeah.
do?
I would say let first of all decide that you want to make this a priority and just start to make room for the idea that supporting people's social health is something that's valuable and easy and a big win, and then start to share resources. I'd be happy to talk to you and help out, but you can start by just letting people know that check out the nearest silent book club, the nearest trash pickup volunteer opportunity, the nearest bike party, or tell us what you do. Even just to create like a channel in Slack or a thread where you say, hey, what are things that you're involved in your community? How are you participating in your neighborhood? And if you're not, here's your prompt. Go find something and tell us about it and see what people find. I think people will find a lot of inspiration from what they learn from each other. While we work on making the infrastructure better,
Yeah.
and certainly that's going to be part of what I'd like to do is to get these kinds of city guides, community directories, pop-up tabling into more cities. And so that's part of where I think there's an opportunity, maybe from a consulting standpoint, to say, I can help your city do this.
Mm.
And that's kind of what I'm going to start cranking on next.
Yeah, and I think people are craving this because I've seen a backlash in the last couple of years on Are You OK Day. Do you have that in the US?
I've heard of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so they have, the Are You OK, the mental health awareness and the idea. And so what organizations do is you're supposed to go around and ask your colleagues, Tony, are you okay? And they have cupcakes. But there's been this backlash to say, okay, great, you've got these Are You OK cupcakes, great. Like that isn't really it. And then if I
Now
go
what?
up
Yeah.
to you and say, are you okay, Tony? And you say, yeah, I'm not. People are like, I have no idea what to do next, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. And so the whole like confronting someone with "Are you okay?" in a workplace setting is very problematic. I appreciate the sentiment. I'm sure there's a lot of good that comes from it, but being able to celebrate what people are doing that's healthy for them outside the workplace in their own situation, lowering the barrier to that, raising awareness of the kinds of things people can do, I think is also a win. I mean, even just to say like, I'm not sure how much we want to kind of enforce these things, or push these things. You want to make room for people to be, for it to be okay for someone to not have an answer to like,
Mm,
what do you belong to? Maybe I got kids. Maybe I got a sick parent. Maybe I don't have time to join a new thing. That's okay too.
mhm,
But even to just celebrate, like, here are some easy things you could do.
mhm.
I'd love to see a hangout movement. Maybe there's one out
Mm,
there, but like, I'd love to literally see a movement of people who are committing to hanging out with a friend and posting a picture of them doing that and using a hashtag and whatever, uh, as a activity for our health.
mhm.
And I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for stuff like that, to celebrate and to support.
Yeah, I think the work that you're doing is so important in putting together this scaffolding, as you said, the infrastructure that people can use, because there is so much out there, I think, in every community and place that we just don't know about. My kids were super into Lego when they were younger. And so I can't remember what the name of it, if it's, yeah, anyway, they have, like Lego festivals kind of where people who are really great, build. And so when I went to the first one with them, I was like, oh, this will be interesting. But there's this, I found out a whole adult Lego community, right? That's like huge around the world. And then these people had created the most astonishing things.
Yeah.
And I think the adult Lego market is nearly as big as the kids Lego market now, maybe not quite. So there are all those kind of things that you just wouldn't happen to know about, that you can find your thing, right? That whether it's,
Yeah.
I want to build a scarecrow at the front of my house, I want to go to the silent book club, I want to go and become an adult Lego builder. But it's just, yeah, so I think what you're doing is so important because we're all so busy and tired and stressed. People just think, oh, it's too hard. I'm going to go home and sit on the couch with Netflix.
Yep. And that's the problem, is that those companies are counting on you to do that. And they're giving you, it's literally free heroin. That's what
Yes.
these algorithms are. It's
Mm-hmm.
free heroin. It's unlimited dopamine that, the comfort and anonymity of the couch at the end of the
Mm.
workday is so tempting, and it's so dangerous. And so, and I don't think that the answer is to overly demonize the screens and the algorithms. Let's acknowledge that they can be very dangerous and very unhealthy. But I'm
Mm.
also not trying to say, let's throw away our phones. We're not going to.
No.
But if we can just say, hey, look, there's one night a week, there's one morning a week where
Mm.
I do something that makes me feel really great, where I get to know my neighbors better and I participate in the community, even if that's just committing to go hanging out the same cafe once a week, right? Or having pizza with a friend to watch trashy television. Even that would be a win if
Mm.
it's a little more than what you've been doing. And recognizing that, hey, we all want to flop down on the couch and scroll on our phones while we ignore our TVs every night. But uh,
Literally.
it, if we do literally that every single night, that's going to be bad.
Yeah.
And so we just need to, try to add some healthy social vegetables to our time diets.
Amazing. Tony, where can people find out more about these initiatives and what you've been doing?
Sure. So I'm Tony Be Good on most of the socials, TonyBgoode. You can also find my website is tonybacigalupo.com. Obviously, you know how to spell that. So no, it's TonyBacigalupo. And I'm most active on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. That's where I write, some of my best stuff about what I'm up to. And then the project that I'm kind of housing some of this work under is the Belongfulness Project. And so that's BELONGFULNESS. And that's belongfulness.com.
We'll link all of those in the show notes. Tony, thank you so much for your time today. This work, ever since I've known you, you're just such a good human being doing so much good for humanity. So it's just always great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
All right, back at you, Libby. I'm honored. I'm really glad we get a chance to catch up, and hope we get to do it again real soon.